Hey guys, Faxi here. In this video I'd like to show you a cool device for the Scope Fusion platform. A device by a developer called dNa, which is a long-time developer for the platform. And this is called the Effect Rack. It has been released together also with another device called the Channel Rack, which you can look on our channel, and there's a video for the Channel Rack as well. In this one we will be talking about the Effect Rack. So as you can immediately see, this is a multi-effect sort of rack, a pedal board, something like that. Kind of like a lunchbox sort of configuration. And before we get into the what it does itself, let's just look at the outside for a minute. So it is a stereo device, stereo inputs and stereo outputs. Also has MIDI in, MIDI out, and sidechain input. Over here I've connected just the stereo ins and stereo outs for the purpose of demonstrating this video. I have the device connected via ADAT over here, via the Z-Link, to a Yamaha DX200, which is an FM synthesizer with also a built-in sequencer, so maybe you can play some sequences inside so we can a little bit check it out. So let's get into the device itself. So as I've mentioned, and as you can obviously see, you have different effects inside this device. And before we get into them, you know what, let's initialize it for a minute. Init empty. Okay, so when you open up and initialize presets, you have empty effect slots. Over here on the main controls on the right here, you can bypass the effect entirely by just turning it off. Turning it on will turn on a red LED over here, so you know when it's on. Also, you can notice that it'll turn on the whole the matrix here on the top, show you that every one of these effects is not bypassed, and I'll show you in a minute how you can also bypass individual effects and not just the whole device, but that's on the effects themselves. So you also have a dry wet mix knob for the whole device. When it's dry, you know, you can hear just the original sound, obviously, and when it's all the way wet, you can hear the mix sound. I guess in most configurations you'll be working with wet all the way on because you have, you know, dry wet mounts on each of the plugins themselves, but it is available as well. And you have a cool VU meter, peak meter in the views, peak meters and a VU meter on the top. Two more controls to look at on the kind of the main controls is over here you have two buttons that kind of help you load the DSPs in a little bit of a different way. With both of them turned on, then all the effects inside this device will automatically be loaded onto the DSPs instead of dynamically loading. So for example, dynamic loading would be, right now everything would be turned off. I don't want to mess with it right now because I don't want to kind of mess with the DSP on scope as I'm making the video. But if everything here was turned off, then it would be taking much less DSP because it wouldn't be loading all these effects onto DSP. Right now with everything turned on, then basically every one of these effects is preloaded onto the DSP. Now as you can see, this is an empty project more or less. Only this thing is the real big thing that is loaded here. And you can see that on 10 DSPs on the PCI cards, it takes quite a lot of DSP with everything turned on. Still, I would recommend, especially if you're browsing presets, to have everything loaded onto DSPs, or else every single preset that you will be loading will be reallocating and reloading the DSPs. And let's say your project is, let's say you have a lot of stuff open, okay? You have some synths, you have whatever you're doing in your project, and you're pretty much tight on DSP. So one preset might let you play everything, but if you load another preset and you're dynamically loading, then suddenly many more things might be loaded with the new preset, and suddenly you'll be going, it's just over the maximum DSP, and it's just kind of annoying, right? You'll have to reassign and, you know, kind of, I don't know. I prefer to work like this. But if you already know what preset you're using, if you already know that you're just using, let's say, these two, and you don't need everything else turned on, and you just want to continue working and conserve DSPs, then after you have set everything, you can turn these two off, and then it'll save you a lot of DSP that, you know, it's unnecessary to load them if you're not using the rest of these effects. So It's kind of a little bit confusing, but not really, you know. So one last thing is you can actually rename here. You can put your own name to the device, and it'll also rename it over here on the main project. It'll also rename your preset file. So you can change, let's say you have different ones open and you want, you know, to give a unique name to each one of them that is open, and you want it, for example, to automatically load a certain preset file by just renaming it. You have the option of renaming the device itself. So let's get into the effects. So let's first get out of the way like the more I don't know what to call it, like the scope stuff, the stuff that you already have in scope, okay? And then we'll get to the unique stuff. So the stuff that you already have in scope are the insert effects. So you have one of the effects that you can load here is the insert slot, and this will let you load any scope effect that will load into the multi-effects box. Anything that will show up basically in your effects folder in the stereo section. So for me, for example, I have black box from MIDI, and it loads fine here, no problem, from SpaceF. Or you can load traditional scope effects, whatever you want in here. So for example, now I have loaded a pitch shifter. You can also obviously load a multi-effects into this slot, which is really cool. So you can load the built-in effects and a multi-effects if you want. The insert slot, sometimes I actually use it empty with this device because it also has an built-in EQ. So even if you don't use an insert effect, you might want to use the EQs. You know, you might set up your whole patch, and the only thing you need really is just a bit of a low cut. So you can just load this insert slot and use the EQs over here, which comes in really, really handy. Two other options that you have here, obviously, are gain, basically, input gain and output gain. So you can use it also as a gainer, you know, in the final stage if you want. You can give it a little bit of gain. One thing I'd like to look at in general here, once we loaded a slot, as you can see here, you can bypass the individual effect. And you can see that it turns on and off here, the insert itself. And this goes for each and every one of these slots. So once you turn something off, then it will show a little bit grayed out here, over here. So before we get into the other effects here, I want to show just 1 second the routing. So this is at the heart of this device, I guess, is the routing. So for the example, I loaded it on the 6 slot over here, but I can actually move it around. You know, I can go to any one of these slots. And once we load some more, I'll show a little bit more how this comes in really handy. But keep in mind that you can only load one of each. So if I load the insert slot over here, I can't load another insert slot over here. If I press insert here, then it'll just move it over here. Okay, so you only have one. But you can place it anywhere you want in the chain. So the chain obviously goes from left to right. So the first effect into the second, into the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and then to the outside. So that's about the routing and about the insert. We use the insert slots to show a little bit about the routing. Now let's get into the other cool stuff that we have here. First, we have a really cool and unique chorus and flanger module with a lot of parameters. And the parameters, what is kind of unique a little bit over here is that the parameters are kind of set aside for the left and for the right side. So here you have intensity left, intensity right, speed right, width right, delay, and a low-pass filter at the very end. There's also some options where you can, I think now it's turned on actually, where you can sync, you can sync some of the knobs, right? So you can sync the speed of the left and the right, and then if I move the speed just for the left, it'll move it for the right as well. Or you can turn off the sync. Why is it not doing it? Okay, there we go. And then it'll be independent. There's some other options over here, the way the LFO is behaving, the way the sync is behaving. Pretty cool stuff. And you can also independently set the stages for each side. So you can have 2 stages for this side and let's say 4 stages for this side, whatever you really want to do. And one more thing that this thing can do is there's basically 2 chorus effects inside. There's this one, and then there's this one. Now this one works a little bit different, where over here you had left and right. Here you have the signal gets split into left, middle, and right. And then you have, just as before, where you had different, you have the speed for the left and the speed for the right, and different parameters for each side, basically. So here you have, delay for left, depth for left, delay for middle, depth for middle, and delay for right, and depth for right. Then you have the overall rate of modulation for all three sides. Over here, a dry wet, and again a low pass filter. Oops, you see, again, we're having kind of DSP problems. So now that we've really loaded our DSPs, hopefully we're back in action. So again, two types of chorus flanger sort of vibe. Oh, one more thing on this color. Oh, again, why is it doing that? So, sorry about that. On a bigger system, it doesn't do these problems. Here, it's a system of 3 cards. You have 3 DSP on the Luna, and then another Luna, and another Pulsar. On my other machine, I have a PCI card as well, but it consists of a scope card, 15 DSP, and it doesn't even do the reloading. But regardless, it's fine and everything is working. So sometimes you might encounter that, even though I'm kind of not sure why it did it just now, because everything is actually fully loaded on DSPs. Still, it's not really a big deal. It only happens if you have a ton of stuff loaded. So the next one in the chain, let's look at the filter. Let's leave the chorus on over here, just kind of to be cool. You have a filter with both a high pass and a low pass section, and both of them are fully realized with a cutoff knob, resonance knob, and modulation over here. There's LFO speed that you can set right here, and you can actually double the LFO speed, so you can have you have a range, that goes from 0 to 10 hertz, as shown up here. And then if you double it, then it'll show ×2 on the side that's doubled. So, and the modulation depth is separate for both sides. Another cool thing that you can do is, let's look for some preset maybe that we can. Okay, let's turn this off. So one thing that you can do is let's get some modulation. So now you actually heard that the modulation went from left to right because the modulation was inverted over here. If I turn off the inversion, then the modulation for both sides will be the same. But it's actually pretty nice in many cases to turn it on. So you get a little bit of a panning effect for the filter by keeping the invert modulation on. So that's for the filter. Next is probably my favorite effect on this on this device over here, and it's called a modulator. Now, what it does is it provides a couple of functions. You can pretty much get from tremolo, pitch shifting, pitch modulation, so vibrato. So tremolo, vibrato, and then if you go into higher speeds, you can get amplitude modulation and frequency modulation as well. So the way it works, let's say right now it's on pitch. So if I'm on. So you get sort of a vibrato effect. Now the speed here, remember on the filter, you could go ×2 on the modulation speed. Here, you can go ×100. Once you go to ×100, it goes from a maximum of 10 hertz to a maximum of 1000 hertz, and that is also already in the audio domain, and it becomes sort of an FM modulator. So it's pretty sick, pretty cool. And this is when you're in FM mode. Now you can also go into volume mode. And you get sort of a tremolo. And again, you have the same invert function that you had on the filter over here, if you remember. You have it over here as well. So now the invert is on, so we're getting a stereo sort of ping pong effect, right? You can also turn off the inversion, and then it's just like a standard tremolo. Let's see if I have, I don't know what's on this sequence. Let's try to... Now you can also go times 100 on the volume modulation, and then again it goes into audio rate and you have amplitude modulation. So it's pretty sick stuff. You have also the ability to change the shape of the modulating signal from a sine, triangle, saw up, saw down, and envelope, which kind of uses the sidechain input. Envelope, side, chain, there we go. So that's for the modulator. I think this is really neat, actually. I've played with it, and you can get really cool sweet spots, and obviously this together with the other stuff, yeah, it gets pretty hectic and pretty cool. The next thing that we can look at is the delay. So the delay, basically you have it's a stereo delay with the ability to crossfade as well. You can link the parameters and turn it into sort of like a mono delay, you know, where each side is the same, or you can unlink them, and then it's a true stereo delay, you know, with different times for each side, and with the ability to crossfade. And so let's see, let's send something over here, the same loop that we had before. So as you noticed, I played with the cutoff over here. This is a built-in internal filter. Kind of influences how the whole delay sort of sound. And there's different modes for the feedback. So you can be in filter feedback or in filter delay mode. Okay, I think you get the idea. Pretty cool delay that obviously works in concert with all the other stuff. And the last thing that I'd like to show is the reverb. So this is kind of reminiscent of the Scope Masterverb Pro, but it's realized in a little bit of a different GUI and a little bit of a different way. All your parameters are kind of set over these pages over here, and you have everything that you need. You know, really quickly you can see what every knob does just by clicking on it, moving it, and you will see exact positions over here on the top. All the parameters. So I've shown you each and every single one of the effects that are built in inside, and individually they are cool by themselves and unique. Especially this modulator is unique in the Scope environment. But obviously it gets really cool when they work in concert all together, so a sound like this can quickly become or let's take something else. So this would be the dry sound from the DX200. See, it was a little tiny bit clipping here, I'm sorry. Obviously, when you, the presets here, when you go into such a large chain, right, when you have like 6 effects, then you'll probably need to a little bit kind of, you know, set your input and output gain maybe a little bit, and kind of play a little bit with the parameters, just in regards to the gain structure itself even. So look how it can get really cool. It became from something like this, can turn into something like this. Let's look at another preset from the... So it comes with quite a few presets. Right now you saw my own pack, which is 128 presets. There's some more presets from Ray, but there's also some more presets. Like what you see here is not everything that the device comes with. It comes with a little bit more than what you see here, but already this is a lot. It's really, really fun. The coolest thing about it to me is, let's go to the strong things here, okay? So the strongest thing here is the ability to quickly change the order of the effects. And as you see, when I turn them on or turn them off, it still retains my settings. So you can quickly put the chorus before the filter. You can put the pitch shifter first if you want. Add some reverb. And of course, as with anything on Scope, you can link to controllers and real time control everything with your controllers if you would like to. Actually, I really like this device. The strongest thing, like we said, is the routing, but also the other cool stuff. The other cool thing about it is that it brings some cool new unique effects to Scope. Right, the chorus and flanger is pretty cool and pretty unique, interesting sound with 2 flavors inside. The modulator is really cool. The reverb, I really actually like the interface. I mean, it's master verb inside, but I like the interface inside. It's really easy to set everything, really quick and simple. And I also really like the filter over here. Lots of parameters, and it works really cool inside with the other things. It's really fun to save your own racks here. As you saw and we talked about, I have a ton already. And they range from initialized sort of stuff to stuff that utilize actually all 6 of these effects. So check it out, dNa's effect rack for the Scope Fusion platform, guys. And I'll see you in our other videos. Thank you.